I am the Noetherian, here with another Soulforge draft video. When Set 1 Draft first came out, I did a series of 6 videos exploring some of the options available in each of the 6 faction pairings in Soulforge Draft. Since that time, I've now done a couple hundred Set 1 drafts, and I've explored the format a lot more, learned a lot of things, and so I wanted to go revisit the faction pairings in Set 1 Draft and provide my thoughts with the benefit of some more experience. Also, Set 1 is winding down as a format. I think hopefully Set 2 is not too far off in the future. But Stoneblade has said tentatively that they're thinking about a combined Set 1 and Set 2 draft format once Set 2 is released. So certainly having a deep understanding of the cards available in Set 1 will not only help you with Set 1 draft, but also could help in a future combined format. So with that in mind, let's look at Pack 1, Pick 1. So when Set 1 Draft first came out, I had some very good experiences with Alloyin Uterra. In particular, Uterra plus Necreum Swarm decks were seen a lot in the draft environment when Set 1 first came out. I still play occasionally against Uterra plus Necreum Swarm decks, but I find that I play against those decks a lot less frequently than I did early in the format. People have gravitated more so towards other options. And for that reason, I think Alloyin Uterra is a much weaker first pick than it was perhaps earlier in the format. I've never been a big fan of Firestorm in this format. Epidemic is another card. My opinion of Epidemic has gone down over time. It's a strong stall card, particularly against the Swarm decks that try to fill the lanes. There's certainly the upside potential for Epidemic to be devastating, but I'd much rather have a proactive threat that I can build my deck around as my first pick instead of taking a stall card like Epidemic. In particular, even in matchups where Epidemic is good, you need to have some strong cards, some strong late-game cards that you're stalling for in order to make Epidemic a really good play. Otherwise, you can find yourself leveling Epidemic, leveling Sonic Pulse, Pulse Mage, those kind of stall cards, and not being able to get the late-game bombs that you need to actually finish off your opponent, which is an unfortunate way to lose. So I'm not big on first picking Epidemic, Firestorm, or Justicar. Flesh Fiend is a very solid first pick. It's a very strong creature at levels 2 and 3. Many decks don't have good answers to late-game Flesh Fiends, so I've generally been happy with the card. I mean, it's not spectacular. It's not that much better than other strong mid to late game cards, but it's a good pick, and I certainly don't mind taking it first. It might be the best pick here. However, I wanted to look carefully at Steelforge Avatar. When the format first started, I completely avoided Avatar first picks. In order for an Avatar to really be good, you need like 80% of your deck to be the faction matching the Avatar. So it's a somewhat risky strategy. Sometimes the strategy comes together. You can get a deck that is mostly one faction, get out a 6/6 or 7/7 Avatar early game, and really put your opponent in a bad position. On the other hand, sometimes the cards in the Avatar's faction just don't come through for you. You find yourself needing to pick outside the faction in order to get the strong quality cards you need for a deck. And so I've had a lot of Avatar decks fall apart as well. My current thinking on Avatar is that especially Steelforge and Stormforged Avatar, which I think are the two strongest avatars, the Alloyin and the Tempest avatars, that I do like taking a chance on those cards as long as there isn't an obvious other pick in the deck. The key, though, to making an avatar first pick work is you need to be able to abandon the strategy. After you've taken like 5 or 6 cards in the deck, you need to look at what you have and figure out whether or not it's possible to put together a, like an 80% Alloyin deck and have it work, or if you've been forced to take quality cards in your second faction in the first 5 or 6 picks, then you need to be willing to just jettison your avatar, figure that it's a wasted pick, it's not going to provide you with much value, and just pick the best cards available in each pack after that. And the other thing to keep in mind is that even when the avatar strategy fails, you have something more like a 50-50 deck, there's always the chance mid-game that you can get a 6/6 avatar, which is a perfectly reasonable level 1 play in the mid to late game. So if you're forced to play a level 1 card, Avatar's not a bad level 1 card, and even with only like half your deck Alloyin, there's the opportunity to luck out and have it be moderately useful. So it's not completely wasted, but anyway, I think I'm going to take the avatar here just to demonstrate how I approach an avatar deck. And again, we'll come back after about 5 cards and look at what we have and see whether or not we need to push forward with the avatar strategy or if we need to just jettison that pick and go in a different direction. So let's take the avatar. And so since I'm mostly a Alloyin deck, my favorite second faction is going to be Uterra. I'd like to only have 4 to 6 Uterra cards in the deck, ideally, to make the avatar good. And Uterra is a really good splash faction. In particular, if I can get something like Grove Huntress or Enrage, maybe a Strength in Numbers, although that's less good. I think those type of growth cards are good with the powerful Alloyin robots and late game cards like the War Charger and the Forge Plate Sentry. Also the Avatar, getting like an Enrage 1 on a large Avatar can create all sorts of problems for your opponent. So I'd like to go into Uterra here. I think that Matriarch and Cleric are both excellent all-around cards. I think that I generally prefer Matriarch over Cleric in decks that are going to have a lot of Uterra in them. Matriarch has really good synergy with other Uterra cards like Spring Dryad, Ferocious Roar, Strength in Numbers, and so I think if I'm going Uterra, I like to take Grove Matriarch for the support of the Swarm strategy. When I'm just splashing a little bit of Uterra, though, I think Lightbringer Cleric is going to be a better choice. Lightbringer Cleric has solid stats at every level. The little bit of health that it gives can be very useful, especially in an Alloyin deck that's trying to win with powerful late game cards. Again, I don't know yet whether or not I'm going to end up with powerful late game cards, but oftentimes my Alloyin decks end up with strong level 3 cards, and Lightbringer can give you the little boost you need to stay alive that long against an aggressive deck. So this is not a pack that I'm happy to see. Think Natural Selection is pretty much worthless. Primal Surge is questionable. I've had it work for me in the right kind of deck, but I'm never happy to take it until I know that I'm going to have a deck that can use Primal Surge, particularly like an armor-heavy deck can get good use out of Primal Surge. Aegis Pulse. Aegis Pulse is rarely good. I've seen Aegis Pulse work in a very small number of occasions, but it really takes good fortune in order to get a board position where Aegis Pulse can be a good play. So I think I take the Metasite. I think I'm happy to have a Metasite in my Alloyin decks. I don't play Metasite very often. Um, I think it's really easy to fall into the trap of playing Metasite whenever you draw it early game. Whether or not Metasite is a reasonable play is so matchup dependent. If your opponent is doing anything aggressive, Metasite will kill you quickly. Or allow your opponent to kill you quickly. I've won many, many games because my opponent meta-cited inappropriately, and I had drafted an aggressive deck. But I think if I'm careful not to play it at inappropriate times, I think having a Metasite can work. Particularly, I mean, in a matchup against another late-game deck, whoever has the Metasite can certainly be decisive. I think I'm happy to take a Light Shield Patrol here in a... I'd love to pick up Matrix Warden is an excellent Alloyin card. Heavy Artillery isn't a bad Alloyin card. As I mentioned, I'd love to get an Enrage in this deck, so Light Shield Patrol is not a card I've had a lot of success with in draft, but the situations where it's good for me have been really the Alloyin Uterra deck. Again, I'd much rather wait until after I had an Enrage to take Light Shield Patrol, but I mean, I'm certainly not going to take Nexus Core or Bulwark Bash given what I have so far. And here's my Enrage, where I'm very, very happy to have an Enrage in this deck. Okay, so right now we have 3 Alloyin cards and 2 Uterra cards. And I think we're about to take another Alloyin card from this pack. So we have maybe a little more Uterra than I like. In particular, we're a little bit short at this point in the draft on strong Alloyin cards. But I'm not ready to give up on Avatar yet, but at some point in the next couple picks, I'd like to figure out whether or not I've got the critical mass of Alloyin to continue on the Steelforge strategy, or whether I should jettison that. But I think it's not really an issue here because I think the best cards in this pack are probably Infiltrator and Warden. Sower can be good in a Swarm deck, but we don't have any support for a Swarm deck. And so we're not going in that direction, and so I don't think Sower is strong here. Infiltrator versus Matrix Warden is a very difficult choice for me. Matrix Warden is it's such a great utility card. It's good if you don't level it. It can be very powerful if you do level it. You can use Matrix Warden on itself to create a good blocking creature, or you can use Matrix Warden on another threat. Again, like Matrix Warden on a Light Shield Patrol or a Steel Forged Avatar can be quite good. Can create threats that are quite difficult for your opponent to deal with early to mid-game. Infiltrator just has incredible stats, has good synergy with the Enrage that we already have, also has good synergy with Matrix Warden if we are able to pick up another one of those. I think given that we have Light Shield Patrol, we have Steel Forged Avatar, in general Matrix Warden is great with cards with armor, and of course great with Light Shield Patrol because it activates it. I think I need to take Matrix Warden, although I need to make sure that I'm able to pick up enough threats. And yeah, it's possible that I'm going to regret passing up this Infiltrator, but it's still early in the draft. Matrix Warden is one of the best utility cards available. Just good in so many situations. So I'll take the Matrix Warden. And this is a situation where the best card in the pack probably is not Alloyin. So, Munitions Drone, I've not had a lot of success with Munitions Drone. I think Munitions Drone is a very poor card to level early. Sometimes a level 1 Munitions Drone can be useful mid-game, so it's not unworkable. The problem is that Munitions Drone is a horrible draw when my opponent has a stronger board position than I do, and so it can be a great card to sneak in if I'm doing well on the board during player rank 2, but it's so dangerous when my opponent has nasty threats coming at me, and the only thing I have in my hand is a munitions drone, or at least I feel pressure to play a munitions drone. So uh, anyway, so I'm not too happy taking munitions drone, but it's not an unworkable card, and of course it does have good synergy with Light Shield Patrol. I think the best card in this pack is Deep Branch Prowler. I like Deep Branch Prowler more than a number of other drafters. If you've watched other people's draft videos, you'll see a number of people take Prowler lower than I do. Uh, I rarely level Prowler early game, but it's just such a great blocking creature. Also, it in decks with a lot of Uterra, it synergizes really well with Life Shaper Savant or Ferocious Roar. Works really well with can work with Enrage or Grove Huntress. Again, you keep the Prowler level 1 and then use like a level 2 Enrage or a level 2 Grove Huntress on it. So again, Prowler's a card I'm very happy to pick up. I don't have high attack level 1 creatures so far. I'm short on blockers. It is possible that this is the point where I should abandon my Steelforge Avatar strategy. Yeah, these are the difficult decision points that Steelforge Avatar creates. If I grab Prowler here, then I'm about half and half after the first 7 picks, and I should probably I'll probably abandon that path. But I'm going to take Munitions Drone. I think Prowler's not enough better than Munitions Drone. I think having one Munitions Drone in my deck is not bad. I'm going to take it. We'll see whether or not I regret this. So Aegis Conscript isn't bad. I think I'm very happy to have a second Enrage. I think I just need to take the Enrage here. Yeah, I think Enrage is... When I splash Uterra with an Alloyin deck, Enrage is really the card that I most am looking for in the splash. So I'm going to take Enrage. Here we've got another Matrix Warden. Forge Guardian Alpha is an interesting card. When I first started drafting this set, I mostly discounted Forge Guardian Alpha. In particular, it's a card you need to level, and early game, it doesn't put any pressure on your opponent. I much prefer a card from in most circumstances, I much prefer a card like Glacial Colossus, which is less reliant on being leveled. Forge Guardian Alpha it really needs to be leveled in order to be good, and leveling Forge Guardian Alpha takes pressure off of your opponent, and I tend towards more aggressive strategies, more aggressive styles of play. But over time, I've been convinced that Forge Guardian Alpha is actually a good card. You need Jetpack with it. I've played decks that have like 3 Forge Guardian Alphas and 2 Jetpacks, and works incredibly well as a win condition. Also works very well in Alloyin Tempest with something like a Zephyr Mage or a Fervent Assault, because being able to move a Forge Guardian Alpha is very strong. You can take out multiple of your opponent's threats. So I like Forge Guardian Alpha more than I did, but this is not the right deck for it. I think, again, Matrix Warden is a really good card. Given that I get the second Matrix Warden, I now wish I would have taken the Infiltrator earlier. But again, I mentioned that we were a little bit short on strong blockers, and Matrix Warden buffing itself can be a strong blocker, in addition to just a great utility creature. So happy to take Matrix Warden here. This is a Swamp Moss Lurker, and at this point, I think the Avatar is just not going to be good for us. I think the deck is not going in a bad direction, but a third of the way in, yeah, a third of the way in, I think that we're not going to get enough Alloyin cards to really make Avatar good. Again, maybe we get lucky and we sneak in a 6/6 Avatar at some point with a lucky draw. But for the most part, I think we're giving up on Avatar. We didn't see a Steel Shaper Savant in the first 10 picks. Steel Shaper Savant is probably the weakest of the Savants, but in an Alloyin heavy deck, it can still be quite good. So I'm going to take Swamp Moss Lurker, and I think I'm going to largely abandon Avatar and just try to take the best possible card in each pack. Moreover, when I look at because we have 2 Enrages, we have 2 Matrix Wardens, really what I'm looking for is creatures with strong base stats. Have not seen Ionic War Charger or Forge Plate Sentry, but those are really the cards that I'm most looking for at this point. Let's see here. So Sparkblade Assassin is a strong level 2 threat. I love playing Sparkblade Assassin in relatively aggressive decks. You can get a really powerful threat on turn like 2.1 or 2.2 with a Lucky Assassin draw, which is great if you have a strong board position to begin with. Also, sometimes you can sneak in Assassin as a blocker during rank 2, and the 12-13 stats still hold up pretty well late game. So I've generally been happy with Assassin. I think I was undervaluing it when I first started the format. It's turned into a good card for me. Again, not one that I want to take out of a pack of 6, but I'm not going to take it in this circumstance, but I think it's one that I initially undervalued, and I've gotten good use out of it. I think the 2 choices here are Nexus Pilot and Technosmith. Again, Technosmith, like Metasight, is a card. It's easy to play it too often. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble against aggressive decks with Technosmith. On the other hand, in battles between 2 late-game decks, Technosmith certainly can be a decisive factor. Unfortunately, I don't have great cards to level with Technosmith yet. Don't have, again, Forge Plate, a War Charger, Beta. Lurker's not a bad card to level with Technosmith. The 22-15 is actually pretty strong for Lurker. Can be a late game card. But I think the card I'm going to take here is Nexus Pilot. I'm very happy to have 1 Nexus Pilot in any Alloyin deck, and this is probably a good point to take it. And it's a solid body for me, and I think I need a solid body. So here's the jetpack that I might have taken if I had drafted those Forge Guardian Alphas, but we're not going in that direction in this draft. I think I take Grove Matriarch here because it's just a solid all-around creature. So the choice here is between Delver and Lurker. I've been generally very unhappy with Stasis Warden in draft. You need a lot of spells in order to make Stasis Warden reasonable, and even with a lot of spells, I find that that Stasis Warden is less good than, say, a Darkheart Wanderer, which is, I mean, Darkheart Wanderer is a similar card that triggers off of spells, but due to the level gating of Stasis Warden, you really have to level it to make it good, and I just find that its stats are sufficiently low that it's hard to level without getting too far behind on the board. So I've not been happy with Stasis Warden. Taking a second Lurker is fine. Lurker's a great blocking creature. Can potentially be a solid late game card. One issue that with Lurker is the 13-6 actually isn't a very good threat mid-game. When you play out a Lurker into an empty lane, you find that your opponents very often are able to block it with level 1 creatures and kill it. So if one drafts too many Lurkers and plays them early game, you can end up in a situation where your player level 2 ends up being very reactive. You don't have enough proactive threats leveled. Speaking of proactive threats, Delver is exactly the opposite. You basically can't block with it, but it's a good proactive threat when you can play it in an empty lane if you're in a pretty good board position. I think I'm going to take Delver here. I already have a Swamp Moss Lurker. Would love to pick up another Swamp Moss Lurker, but I think Delver is a good proactive threat, and I'm a little bit short on threats with solid bodies. I should also mention I passed up Botanimate in that last pack without giving it a whole lot of thought. Botanimate can be good. In particular, Botanimate can answer cards that otherwise you have no answers for. It's certainly playable. I'm very happy to end up with a Botanimate if there's nothing else in the pack that I like. But in general in draft, I find that having plenty of good proactive threats is more important than having good answers. And so I think Botanimate's a card that's just much better constructed than it is in draft. This is not a good pack. Cobra is a decent blocker. Yeah, I think I'm going to take the strength in numbers. That might be incorrect. Need to watch my spell count. It's very possible to end up with decks with too many spells. You don't want to have those games where on turn 1, player 1, you end up with, 5 spells in your hand or 4 spells in a subpar creature. That being said, I mean, Ghost Scale Cobra is also not a card that I want to be drawing early in the game, so I think... yeah, I think Ghost Scale Cobra is not that different than a removal spell. I mean, the nice thing about Ghost Scale Cobra is it both absorbs damage and poisons the creature, so it can be quite useful even as a level 1 mid to late game. But I'm going to take Strength in Numbers and Metamind Adept easily. Nexus Core is just not even really a creature. So given that I have 2 Matrix Wardens and a Munitions Drone, 2 Enrages, and a Strength in Numbers, definitely take a Light Shield Patrol. Light Shield Patrol 3 is potentially a game-winning card, and Light Shield Patrols 1 and 2 can be decent if you draw them with like Enrage or Matrix Warden. So it's not a very reliable card, but it's worked for me pretty well in this type of Alloyin Uterra deck. So I'm happy to take a Light Shield Patrol here. I think a number of people would take Technosmith in this circumstance, but I don't have a great late game. Again, Light Shield Patrol will help me with my late game. And so I think I'm really building a deck that's going to have a strong presence in player level 2. Light Shield Patrol, Shardplate Delver, Lightbringer Cleric, Matrix Wardens, the Nexus Pilot. I mean, a lot of these are cards that are very good in player level 2. And so I think that I'm not looking for the game to go to player level 4 or 5. I think I really want to be finishing things off, getting my opponent as low as possible during the mid-game. And so Light Shield Patrol supports that strategy better. And here's my Forge Plate Sentry. Again, Forge Plate Sentry, again, has incredible level 2 stats. I'm getting a lot of things in my deck that really have good level 2 stats. Also, Forge Plate Sentry, very strong level 3 with 5 armor. Especially if you enrage the level 3 version, it can be a serious problem for opposing decks. So, great to get the Forge Plate Sentry, and that... Now that I have a Forge Plate Sentry, maybe now I regret not taking the Technosmith, but I didn't know whether the Sentry would come through for me. And so this makes my deck a bit stronger in the late game, which I'm very happy to see. Yeah, this is not a great pack. Bramblewood Guardian, I think that Bramblewood Guardian is better than I initially thought it was, but my initial evaluation of it was that it was absolutely awful, and I think it is merely a poor card instead of being absolutely awful. It can work with like Ferocious Roar. Ferocious Roar archetypes one of my favorite to draft and play, and roaring onto a Bramblewood Guardian or else patriarching onto a Bramblewood Guardian can be very strong. And once you get past the level 1, the level 2 and 3 stats are actually solid. It can trade with quite a few creatures once you get it to level 2 or 3. So anyway, I think the pick here is Gemhide Basher. There's again, better constructed card than it is a limited card, but there are things like Grimgaunt Predator. I mean, you see a number of people first picking Grimgaunt Predator. Basher can be good at dealing with that. Basher can also be good at dealing with Savants, which can be annoying in limited. So I think I'm happy to have one Gemhide Basher. I don't have great support for Aegis Conscript. Aegis Conscript is okay. Don't mind having one in the deck, but I don't. I don't really have enough big creatures that would benefit from the armor. Here I'm happy to take a Sparkbot. Solid level 1 body. It's I think undervalued by a lot of people. Not a card that I'm excited about, but very, very solid pick. Can play it out early game, and it trades favorably with a number of things that your opponent might be playing. And at 5/6, it's not horrible to play it underleveled. So I'm happy to have Sparkbot. Already have a Metasite, so I'm going to take a Heavy Artillery here. Heavy Artillery can also work with my Light Shield Patrols. Heavy Artillery 1 is big enough to empower a Light Shield Patrol 3. 5 is a magic number in that regard. So happy to take one Heavy Artillery. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spells. I generally like to be sitting around 6 to 8 spells in my final deck. At least no more than 8. 6 is probably ideal. I might be slightly spell heavy here, but not by much. Spring Dryad is great in Uterra Swarm decks. I haven't really been drafting many of the Swarm cards. Don't have any of the Bright Tusk Sowers. Don't have any Ether Hounds. Steel Shaper Savant. If I had gotten that early, I might have picked up more Alloyin. But anyway, it didn't. The Alloyin heavy strategy didn't come through for me, and so I'm not very excited about Steel Shaper Savant. Again, I think it's the weakest of the Savants. Can be okay in an Alloyin heavy deck, but anyway, I think I'm certainly not going to take it over Infiltrator. Infiltrator in a deck that has 2 Matrix Wardens and a Heavy Artillery, some Enrages. Infiltrator can just be a really scary threat at every level, so very happy to take Infiltrator. Now I should count my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I am over half Alloyin. Steel Shaper in this situation might not be a bad pick. Nexus Pilot is a card where the first Nexus Pilot is much, much better than the second Nexus Pilot. You're never going to want to level more than one Nexus Pilot because leads to really awkward situations where you have a pilot in play and you draw a new one. So I don't mind having 2 in my deck, but each Nexus Pilot beyond the first is just much less valuable than the one before it. So I think Deep Branch Prowler is a solid pick here. I have 1 Lurker, I have an Infiltrator, I have 2 Matrix Wardens, which can buff themselves to become a blocking creature. But I think I could use another good blocking creature, another good creature that is high attack even at level 1. So I'm going to take the Prowler here. And War Charger. War Charger is an easy pick. Again, great stats at level 2. The mobility allows it to get damage through onto your opponent. Also a powerful late game card. I'm very happy to have this in the deck. It's a great thing to put an Enrage on. So I think this deck is shaping up well. I think this is a deck that can have a really strong player rank 2 and carry the momentum forward into player rank 3 with cards like War Charger and Infiltrator and Delver, Sentry. I think I'm actually quite happy with the way this deck is coming together. think this is an easy pick of the Vault Technician. Technician. It's if you don't level it, 6/3 is a decent blocker. If you do level it, 12/9, 18/15 become quite strong. So it can be a strong level 2 threat, or you can play it under-leveled. Just a very versatile card. I'm happy to have Vault Technician. And yeah, I think Energy Surge is probably the weakest surge in draft. I've never been happy having an Energy Surge in my deck. It's never worked out well for me. Maybe if you had multiple Technosmiths, you could get away with Energy Surge for some increased consistency, but nah, I've not been happy with Energy Surge, so I'll take the Hydra. Let's see. So I think the strategy with this deck is I want to level strong creatures early game, and then I'd like to be putting, Matrix Warden or Enrage type buffs on my strong creatures like, Light Shield Patrol 2, an Infiltrator 2, a Delver 2, War Charger 2. So that's kind of the way that I envision this deck winning. For that reason, I think I'm happy to have the third Enrage in this deck. At this point, I'm about done drafting spells, but I really think that Enrage 1 on any of my strong level 2 creatures is just going to produce a lot of mileage. So I think I'm going to take the Enrage. And immediately I regret taking the Enrage. 3, 4, 5, 6, yes. Immediately I regret taking the Enrage as I'm presented with an all-spell pack. Toxic Spores is removal. Nice because it can kill almost anything eventually. And in that regard, it's somewhat unique as a removal spell. Tech Upgrade is a weaker version of Enrage. I think the real problem with Tech Upgrade is that it just gains very little power going from level 1 to level 2. And the level 3 version is strong, but it's incredibly rare that you actually get to the level 3 version of Tech Upgrade. And if you compare to Enrage, Enrage is giving, at level 2, 6 attack and 6 health, which is just so much better than 3 attack and 3 armor. And so, anyway, for a card that I'm not likely to take to level 3, the boost from 1 to 2 is just quite poor. What am I doing here? I think I'll take the removal spell for Toxic Spores. Possible that Tech Upgrade is the pick here. Again, I haven't been happy with Aegis Pulse. Force Field just feels like a bad Electronet. My deck definitely does not want two Metasites. Again, there's a number of things that I could Tech Upgrade, but with 3 Enrages, I think I'd just rather be enraging my creatures. So I'm going to take a Toxic Spores for variety. This is a tough call. Vault Technician and Prowler are both good blockers. Sparkblade Assassin is a very strong level 2 creature. Again, this is a deck where I'm hoping to put up strong level 2 creatures to win with. An Enraged Sparkblade 2 can be a real mess to deal with. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 Matrix Wardens, 5, 6. I think I'm going to take the Vault Technician. I think I have enough strong cards at player rank 2. I think I have enough other threats that I can play out at player rank 2 that I don't think I need a Sparkblade Assassin. I think there's other things I want to be leveling. Again, I think I initially undervalued Sparkblade. I think this is the type of deck where Sparkblade is good. But I think I'm going to take another Vault Technician as a high attack blocker. Whatever I take in this pack is probably not going to end up getting leveled. Got a number of things already that I want to be spending my levels on, or spending my level up opportunities on. So I'm going to take a Vault Technician. Grove Huntress. Late Grove Huntress. Very happy to take Grove Huntress for the same reason I like having Enrages in this deck. Grove Huntress also produces a body. At levels 2 and 3 really produces a pretty decent sized body. So happy to have that. And then final pick is a heavy artillery. So 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ended up with 8 spells. Again, probably would like to have one fewer spell in this deck. Either the Toxic Spores maybe or the Metasite probably aren't things that I'm not going to play very often. Still, I think this deck came together pretty well. I think I've got a lot of ways to empower my Light Shield Patrols. I think this deck could be a good deck for Light Shield Patrol. Forge Plate Sentry and Ionic War Charger are both good game winners. So yeah, I think this deck could play out very well. You should come back and see how we do in the games. Thanks a lot.